Okay.
Welcome to Scoop du Jour, Joe Barksdale. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to bring in former LSU and NFL offensive lineman, but now you are a musician, a singer, songwriter, producer, and a comedian. You're a fellow podcast host. You're also writing a book. You've got a lot of things on this resume, and we will dive into all of them. First, just thank you for being here. Really appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
There are so many things, like I said, that we want to jump into. And I think you've kind of been pretty open about the fact that a lot of people know you as a former professional football player. But I read on your website, you said it was never really your dream to go to the NFL. Talk me through that, and just tell me a little bit about how you got there then.
Looking for attention. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it was, looking for attention. But I mean, when I was in high school, up until high school, I thought I was going to be an engineer, designing the inside of cars. And I got kicked out of an engineering camp over the summer. I needed something to do over the summer to stay out of trouble. And Remember the Titans had recently come out, and I'm like, them dudes look like they were in shape. I can get in shape playing football. And one thing led to another. But I would say that I just kept trying to get better. I always knew I had more. So I was trying to, figure out different ways to get that more. And it got me into the NFL, which I'm very grateful for. But it wasn't until like around the time the Mamba Mentality book came out and that kind of thing where I realized like I don't love football. Like I don't want to be remembered, as a football player. Like I feel like there's way more to life. And it was we were playing the Chiefs, losing. And it was a light bulb that went off in my head. It took two 53-man rosters, two organizations worth of football players, front office people, staff to sell out a stadium. And then someone like Taylor Swift is playing the same stadium like 3 nights in a row, sold out. And I realized I wanted to do something more significant. Around the time that the knee protest thing happened, I realized I didn't have a voice, in the NFL. And I think, it's very important to me. I know that that's very important to me. I got a lot to say. So it was a combination of things that led me to where I'm at now, but I'm happy to be here.
There's so many things that you just said that kind of explain exactly who you are. So the first thing I want to follow up on is the fact that you said the Mamba Mentality book came out. And I think I heard that you'd met Kobe Bryant and he became a mentor of yours. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. But I don't think we ever really talked about sports. Now that I'm thinking about it, I don't think so.
What did y'all talk about?
Art and, his plans for the future as far as like books and stuff he had going. And, there was just there were multiple little, like universes, that he was building, like the Harry Potter universe or the Star Wars universe. And I think that he would have been like, in the end, I think he would have been the closest thing to like Black Walt Disney that we have ever had in the country, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Because, people have tried to say that about Tyler Perry, but like, I understand, I respect the hustle, I'm not trying to take nothing away from him, but, when you're talking about Disney, you're talking about like molding kids' minds and, letting them know that anything they want to do is possible and that kind of thing, the hope, the wonder. I think that leaves you by the time you're watching Tyler Perry movies.
And when you talk about hope and wonder and art, and you also mentioned kind of looking for attention as what guided you to wanting to get to the NFL, then you transitioned to this music career. You always had a love for music, but what made you take that step and just say, I'm going to hang up the cleats, the jersey, all the things and make that step for real when you still had time in the NFL?
When I saw how serious Kobe was about, the things he was doing, talking to him about when did he realize it was time for him to retire. Granted, I was not about to play 20 years. But, I remember him talking about how he knew it was time to retire when he was thinking more about what was going on off the court than what was happening on the court. And in my mind, I'm like, damn, that's been happening for years. So I, I need to stop. And it was honestly like a faith thing. And I don't mean a faith thing like, I went to church and the Lord told me to stop. I mean a faith thing like, investing in yourself, kind of like, The Rock did, kind of like what Kobe was doing, what Drake did, those kind of things.
Take me to, you were talking about the kneeling, and the NFL didn't really take a stance in that way, or maybe, just kind of didn't have all the answers, didn't say or do what everyone was thinking. What were you thinking in that moment, and where did you kind of get clarity during that time that was like, I don't really have a voice here?
I'll say it was around the time. I think it was the year before. It was the year before the knees. Eric Gardner got killed. I wrote "I Can't Breathe" on my cleats. They were like, "That's gonna be like $10,000." I was on my rookie deal at the time, but I'm like, it costs money to speak up about people who were murdered. That was kind of the
NFL
first.
find you?
Yeah, well, they didn't fire me because I changed my cleats, but that was what was gonna happen if I didn't.
Wow.
And around that time, like you had NBA players wearing like t-shirts at warm-ups and that kind of thing. And I started to notice the disparity between the NFL and the NBA. The NBA legitimately seems to be like, some kind of organized, structured family, whereas the NFL is like this machine that chews you up and spits you out. And if you've had enough cycles, they'll put you in the Hall of Fame. But I mean, it's different. You know what I mean? Like basketball just seems to be more of a team thing. The NFL just seems to be very like every man for himself, that kind of thing.
And I heard too that you kind of struggled with playing that team sport at times. What was hard about that for
Well, I
you?
hate being on teams. I hate being on teams. In fact, I realized I hated being on teams. Well, I already knew that, but I realized it when I went to California to sing with the NFL Players Choir, and I'm like, oh yeah, I hate being on teams. For a bunch of different reasons. But yeah, I mean, most of the time it's because number one, I just don't fit in. And being neurodivergent is a conversation in and of itself. So it's hard being neurodivergent on a team with a bunch of people that don't see things like you do and not feel crazy. So
Did you know you were neurodivergent when you were in the NFL, or did your diagnosis come after?
it came after.
How did the diagnosis come?
Um,
How'd
I
you find
remember
out?
I remember talking to my therapist about it, and she told me I should she referred me to a specialist. I remember talking to her about how I hate being around people because I feel like I'm acting how a human being is supposed to act, but I feel like one day someone's gonna figure out that like I'm not, and that kind of thing. And that led to different conversations, which led to her um, referring me to the specialist, the autism specialist.
And that's probably hard too, being diagnosed with an autism specialist when you're an adult, especially now. Early intervention and diagnoses come when, children are so young. What was that like on you to be an adult? You'd known something was off, but then you kind of have an official diagnosis when you're an adult. What was that experience like for you?
I mean, it was great. It was weird because it was, there's part of you that's like, we didn't really talk about autism, when I grew up.
Right.
So I guess at first I was a little confused, did a bunch of research because when I was first diagnosed, I was like, cool, we going to Vegas. And, and I'm like, it doesn't work that way. But yeah, I started off doing research and it was a very big relief. And explained a lot.
Yeah.
And my life would be different if I had known earlier. So, and I always say, like, I wouldn't do anything differently. But yeah, like, I would have never got kicked out of that engineering camp if they had known and that kind of thing. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
it gave you like those answers, but still everything happens for a
Yeah.
reason, right?
But it made me more comfortable with just myself and who I am. And as opposed to me asking myself, like, what's wrong with you? I'm just different.
Sure. So it gave you kind of this explanation, right? That you never really loved being on a team, but it still gave you a place to kind of channel that energy. But then you realized was your first love always music, or when did you kind of find that love and then decide that was? I know you said you decided that you really wanted to pursue it when you met Kobe. When did you decide that you really wanted to make it a career?
Around the time I started getting good at guitar. Yeah, around the time I started getting good at guitar and I started actually writing songs that I didn't think sucked. That was definitely I look at that as a checkpoint. And then just learning music theory through the guitar, opening up so many other avenues as far as as far as being able to play other instruments and teach yourself, and being able to pretty much become a composer and a symphony orchestra at the same time. And with that evolution came, a hunger for more. And I realized I couldn't, like, I can't be in the league working 2 jobs. Like, you know what I
Totally.
mean? It's like, how'd you think the game went? Oh, it was fantastic, but I got to get out of here. I got to shut, like, you know what I mean? It's
Your mind was like in another place.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I never really connected with teammates for real. And honestly, like, even after the autism diagnosis, sometimes I wonder who people met. You know what I mean? Like, did
Mm.
they meet me or was it someone I was trying to be? That kind of thing. But being around people in general, everybody just wants to do small talk. I hate small talk. I hate it so much. And that's what, it's a lot of small talk in the locker room. So most of the time I'm by myself anyway with my headphones on. So the, thought process of music is, just going around in my head. And I realized how much better things were with music playing versus without music playing. So when all those things came together and I realized I could write music that didn't suck, I was like, oh, okay, I can actually be good at this. Cool.
So that was your thing. And then I read that you attribute your sound though to all the places football brought you.
Mm-hmm.
So talk to me
Yeah.
about that.
It's cool because, teams are in big cities and big cities have cultures, sometimes multiple cultures. Different big cities have different popular music that you're going to hear. I mean, traveling was honestly probably the best part of football.
Yeah.
Just being able to go to so many different places, see so many different things. And also the consistency of the schedule. I love consistency. But yeah, listening to different music, London included, talking to random people. I don't mean like walking out in the street talking to people, but they were usually people that would be helping the team that were from the city, that kind of thing. Talk to them about, different artists that they listen to and that kind of thing. And of course, the algorithm with Spotify, figuring out what's hot in your area. And then also living in some of these cities like California, I learned how to play like jazz and, like I learned how to play soul music kind of here in Texas, but I've kind of been learning soul my entire, music, whatever. I learned how to play the blues in St. Louis.
Cool.
I learned alternative rock in Detroit. And yeah, So between traveling to other cities and then also being in different cities with a guitar, it's hard not to experience a bunch of different music.
Yeah, that's so cool. My first job was in Greenville, Mississippi, so the Delta and the home of the blues, and that was just like such a big part of our culture living there.
Mhm,
And it was, something like you said, everywhere you go has culture in so many parts, but music, you
mhm,
don't realize like until you live somewhere what kind of their heart and soul musically is. So
mhm.
for someone who doesn't know your music, how would you describe it in terms of like the vibe or the inspiration, the style?
I call it like electric soul slash alternative soul. Just because, like I said, it's rooted in soul, but there's a lot of different places that it goes. I used
Yeah.
to say that my music was like if Marvin Gaye, Jimi Hendrix, and Sly Stone were writing music together and Kanye produced it. But we're just gonna switch Kanye out for like Mike Dean.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think we can do that now.
it sucks though because like, and I know nobody asked about this, but like the college dropout still ain't going nowhere. You know what I mean? Like it was still, and it always will be like a
Such
game
a good
changing album. Yeah.
yeah.
So part of me does want to say like, yes, he is a musical influence, kind of like how people can be your influences on the field but not off the field, kind of like that. Because it's still, I mean, you can still hear it, just like people can hear Jimi Hendrix in my music, like you can still hear it. And musically, the man's fantastic. Once again,
Yeah.
we talking specifically music. But yeah.
Yeah, I get that. I've had people had the conversation with me specifically even about Kanye. And I'm Jewish, so it hits home right to me
Mhm.
right now. And I had somebody reach out to me and say, I want to separate his music from what he's doing, and I do think there's a place to do that, right? Um, but then it's also hard because from what we're seeing right now, you don't want to support someone, and when you listen to these
Named the
music on
airport after
Spotify
John.
or something, you're continuing to support
You named the airport
someone.
after John Wayne, who said that there's a master race, which is white people. You got blackface, vaudeville acts, those were a thing. You got people living in the same country that they were enslaved in. You got poems that we not have to learn, but there's poems that like different historically black fraternities and sororities learn that were written by racist white people.
Right.
I'm saying all that to say we can look back through history at a bunch of different things. I mean, the police in this country started as slave catchers. Like so I guess for me, someone that's also lived in the country and had like a huge Jewish community in Detroit, Michigan. Most of my teachers were Jewish. It's not like me saying I got a black friend, but you know what I mean.
Right.
Yeah, like I grew up learning the holidays and the culture and the traditions and that kind of stuff. Which was weird because I didn't realize it until like after college, and I started, just randomly having all this knowledge about like Yom Kippur and Passover and that kind of thing. And I'm like, wow, those teachers really did, like they did me good.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that if we don't separate the art from the person, then there's a lot of artists that are just gone. Like a lot of artists that are gone. And I don't mean just in music. I'm talking about, comedy, painters, writers.
I,
I
I
mean, the
get what
dude
you're
that wrote Amazing Grace was a slave trader. We sing that thing all the time. Like, everybody's got a version of Amazing Grace. Um, but yeah, like even like little terms that we use, like picnics and
right.
things like that. So
Master bedroom.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um weddings
It's
at
it,
plantations. But
right.
yeah, like
You
I'm
bring up
not.
an interesting point. I think it probably hits at different times, right? We talk
Oh, for
about
sure.
what's going on.
This is just like when he says, well, it's not just like when he said slavery was a choice, but it makes just as much sense, like, which is none, you know.
Right. Which is
Um,
no right. Exactly. What he says doesn't make sense.
And it sucks being a
It
mental
doesn't.
health advocate. My man, I mean, I know I'm pretty sure people said this till they blow in the face. My man needs therapy. But
So talk to me about that. You are such a mental health advocate. You just took the words from what you said, and I know your podcast is to kind of destigmatize talking about mental health, and kind of walk me through what got you to be able to talk about those things, and just to be able to be so open about mental health.
I would say the main thing that helped me be so open was, well, two things. One, you do just want to educate people because there's always someone that's trying to learn. And I realized that if I had the motivation of educating people, I would learn more about it. So that was one. And then two was just being the voice that I wish that I had, which also made me learn more about it because I wanted to be able to articulate it better for the small
Yeah.
child within us all. But, um, and then of course, the diagnoses and taking the medicine and having days where I'm like, oh, this sucks. And, that kind of thing. And if nothing else, I would like to be, that voice that a lot of people, like maybe I'll tweet something about depression or something, and people are like, yeah, this is what I'm talking about. If I can help people communicate with each other better, or get out how they're feeling, or just be okay with talking about how you're feeling. And you don't have to tell everybody, like you can have a close group of friends, or you can even talk to those friends one-on-one. But and it's weird because a lot of the stuff I say I don't do, which is, it makes me feel bad. Like my pastor was talking about that in church last week. He said, whatever he tries to preach on, he tries to make sure that like he does, but he's human, and because I don't call anybody. Like as
It's
much as
hard
I'm
to
like
take our own
reaching out for
advice.
help. Yeah, that's
We
true.
all we all I think we all struggle with that, right? Like,
Yeah,
I'll tell my friends all the time, I think I give great advice. I think I'm the friend people call all the time, and I'm like, "Oh, I should do that. I should do that thing that I'm telling you right now," and it's like what you're saying, we don't
it's
always
so
do
hard.
what we're explaining, but it's easier said than done, right?
That's true. Yeah, but that's. I mean, I'm big on that, and I mean, I think because I look at things differently, I have found a different lane of more like just not brutal honesty, but just like raw honesty. Like if honesty was steak, like, hey, we tapped it on the grill, it's raw, like that. You know what I mean? Um, the people are, I don't know if the word is too afraid to, I mean, at the end of the day, it's based in fear. People are too afraid, but I'm not. I mean, it's, and I think the reason that these conversations do work is because they come from a personal place, not necessarily like me picking people out and using them. I use myself as the example. And I think that maybe that adds some kind of credibility to it. Kind of like if you got a coach that played your position versus, so coach, when'd you play? Oh, I just been coaching my whole life. Man, if you don't shut the hell up, but you know what I mean? Like, so you've been playing Madden in first person. Okay. But yeah, it's that those are probably the main things, and because like even with the, there's a bunch of people saying like you're not alone. That doesn't help me at all. Like, no, I am alone.
Mm,
I am in a room by myself right now. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like kind of like when COVID happened and people are in mansions like we're all in this together, and people are in apartments like no, we're not. Um, Kind of the same thing with that. I never want to be like cliche. That even affects like the type of community service I do because there's enough people. There's enough people doing the mainstream things.
So what do you do?
Backpack giveaways in Detroit. The backpack giveaways have become full blown events now. Haircuts, people's nails getting done, bouncy houses. Of course, you got to fill out that liability waiver. There's, there's
No accidents.
oh, we have musical performances, a mental health panel, kind of like just a little event to give back to the community. It grows every year. Aaron Amos is actually the person who's over that, so shout out to him. I don't know. I just gave a random shout out like this is an award. Anyway,
Hey, if Aaron's listening, or whoever's listening, we like
true,
a community service plug around here.
true. You're right. But yeah, and of course, well, not of course, but like I really like adopting families in the winter for Christmas. That's something I started like the year after my rookie year. There's nothing like helping people, at least in my mind. I mean, even if you look at everything I do, it's to help people. Like even with the comedy and the music, that's why I mentioned mental health and like certain things so much. Because in my mind, like I want to help people, and if I don't do it, who will?
So you mentioned comedy. I
Hmm.
watched some of your stuff on Instagram. You're funny.
Thank
Like,
you.
okay, so when did you realize that you could or that you wanted to do this? Um, and how did you make it happen?
I realized I wanted to do stand up comedy after my first ever, like watching my first ever stand up comedy show. I was probably 14. That
Who
was
was
my
it?
first. Damon Wayans.
Okay.
Um, and I remember just watching, and I remember thinking, like, how do this man's just free flowing with this entire monologue that he's doing. How do you write jokes? How do you do any of that? And then over the years, you watch a bunch of people: Dave Chappelle, John Mulaney, Bill Burr, Chris Rock, Roy Wood Jr. And you start to you have the respect for it. Patrice O'Neill, you have the respect for it, but you don't think you can do it. But people are always telling you how funny you are, and then eventually, you start to be funny in a locker room full of people with a whole bunch of different backgrounds, which means you can be mainstream funny, and you still don't believe that you can do comedy. And then you retire from football to pursue a music career. You retire from football to be more available for music shows, and then a global pandemic hits, and comedy shows are the first things that open back up, and you realize you need to get back on the stage somehow, some way. And in a moment of desperation, you find your purpose.
That's really cool. So one of the podcasts I listen to, um, one of the hosts does comedy, and she always says like, there's a difference between being funny and writing stand up. Was it hard? Was it hard to, I mean, like, yeah, you said you were funny and you were funny in the locker room, but then you sit down and you're trying to write a show. Was
Hardest
that
thing
difficult?
was no, the hardest thing was learning how to do it.
Mm,
After I learned how to do it, it was I'm not saying it's automatic, but like
yeah.
I mean I'm recording a special next year.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in May. Figuring out the city right now. Um,
Nice.
but yeah, it'll be an hour-long special. Um, I will
So
have
just
a
kind
stopwatch on stage. No, I'm just playing. You said
of
what?
just figuring out like the timing, you mean like your comedic timing? And is that what you mean by figuring it out?
Oh, no, 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 no. Figuring out the actual like date of the special, date and location.
Oh, but like it came naturally, like stand up, writing the jokes, all
Oh,
that?
I would say, yeah. Like when I realized, I think the hardest part of stand up, two hardest parts of stand up, three hardest parts of stand up. The first one is you have to be funny. Like before you get on stage, I do believe people can learn how to be funny, but I believe the people who have to learn how to be funny have like a low ceiling. Whereas
Mhm.
someone who's already funny, you know, depending on how vulnerable you want to get and what you want to do and who you want to be, like you could go all the way. So I would say you have to be funny. I would say it's weird. Like part of you has to hate yourself to get back on stage. I mean, and there's the brutal honesty. Part of you has to hate yourself to get back on stage after your first open mic.
Okay.
Um,
Can you explain that?
I think the reason that people are more afraid of public speaking than death is because they're afraid of being embarrassed. When you're dead, you're dead. When you're embarrassed, you have to walk off stage and live, you know?
Mhm.
Um, and your first open mic is embarrassing. I don't know a
Yeah.
comedian that would cut their first open mic footage on like, yeah, this is the shit right here, you know. Um and so to get back on stage after the first time, I mean, what do people say? Like a glutton for punishment? Like it hurts.
Yeah.
Like comedy, I would argue, is a painful thing. It's a painful process to become funny, and that's your whole life. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like funny people, like I said, truly funny people, they're not, I'm not saying they're not mentally healthy, but there's some kind of brokenness in there. and you can see it more and more. The deeper you get into the comedy, you start to see, who's like broken like you, because they're going to be who are the funniest and who people see when you get on stage. But you eventually have to figure out who you are. That's the third thing. You have to figure out who you are. When people are like, oh, you're so funny, you got to bring that person on stage and recreate those same scenarios, if that makes sense. Because you got to be yourself, And then, four, you got to be vulnerable.
Vulnerable.
You got to be willing to be vulnerable. And that's part of that hate yourself thing. It's something to get on stage and talk about a childhood trauma and no one laugh. Like, and you're like, I just bored my soul out here. People are like,
crickets.
Yeah. And it takes, it takes time to keep coming back with that same joke and writing it over and, continuing to work it out and that kind of thing. But like I say, the first time is always the longest time, but there's a lot of people who will forever just be nameless, faceless comedians because they just run and do the same shtick about things that everybody can do. I feel like until you're telling jokes that only you can tell, you're not really doing comedy. I mean, and I know that's coming from like me, but I'm just saying, you know what? Fuck it. It is coming from me because one day I will be known as a great comedian. I'll be like, you remember what Joe Barksdale said? I mean, back then we thought he was a little arrogant, but
we had him on the podcast.
Yeah, but it's the truth.
Heard him on Scoop du Jour first.
So you heard it here first.
Is it therapeutic a little in a way? Because you, like you said, you're kind of sharing all of these things, but you're also kind of grappling with them at the same time or later, like you said, childhood trauma or whatever it is. Is there a little therapy in comedy?
I would say, first of all, comedy is not a replacement for therapy. I done seen too many people. Yeah, and I get it too, though. Therapy is not cheap. But if you have the opportunity to take therapy and you're doing comedy and you're not, I can't. Come on, man. Like, come on. If you have the opportunity to get therapy in general and you're not, come on, man.
Yeah.
Like I said, Kanye West wouldn't be Kanye West if he was still in there. Anyway, like all this happened when he stopped going to therapy and taking the medicine, which is why I stay in therapy and take my medicines. But yeah, it's definitely therapeutic. Things have therapeutic traits. I would argue though, it's not therapeutic on the stage when you deliver it. It's therapeutic the first time someone laughs at it.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because it's together, and it's like I look at comedy like building a house, and people, standing on stage with nothing and building a house. And if people, the more of the house people can see, the harder they laugh. So yeah.
Well, you kind of mentioned too at the start, like you got into football, you wanted to have attention. And
it's not a mentally healthy trait. I've always wanted to be famous.
Yeah. So talk to me about wanting to be famous and music taking you there and comedy taking you there, and then the NFL did a little bit too.
So I've started a serial killing career. I'm just playing. Maybe one day I can get a Netflix show. I want Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson to play me. No.
I mean, who doesn't want The Rock to play them?
This is true.
But yeah, well, that could be a whole conversation for another day about the romanticization of serial killers on Netflix shows.
Yeah, that's true. Some of y'all wilding.
I watched 30 minutes of Dahmer with my boyfriend, and I was like, I'm out. I don't like, I'm really squeamish, and I don't like gory stuff. So that's why. I think I could watch a documentary on it, but not, the show was too much for me. We're also watching The Watcher. Have you heard of that?
Yes, me and my wife are supposed. Why am I whispering? Me and my wife are supposed to be starting that soon.
You're whispering because you're supposed to watch it.
Yeah, we are.
But I watch like this. If people are listening, they're not going to see this, but I cover my eyes from some stuff because I'm so easily spooked.
Okay.
But yeah, that I don't remember what we were talking about, but yeah,
me neither.
Okay, so you're supposed to watch that. What else do y'all like to do? Let's get to some rapid fire fun stuff. So you're supposed to watch that show. What do you guys like to do for fun?
Separately or together?
Both.
together, hanging out with the kids is a lot of fun. Kids say some of the funniest stuff and they do some of the funniest stuff. Like we got a 3-year-old, I'm 4-year-old and a 5-year-old. And just the other day, out of nowhere, you just hit a 4-year-old tell them, "Hey Kennedy, chill, bro." And they're both girls. "Hey bro, chill." Hearing them have their little conversations is so funny. "This is so fun, Kennedy, right? Yeah, Kendall, this is so." I'm like, oh my God.
Kennedy and Kendall, that's so cute because you're a
Kennedy
girl
and
dad.
Kendall. Yeah.
Love it.
Honestly, like I have fun doing anything with my wife. Going to restaurants, going to movies, walking through the park, stealing from Walmart, the normal stuff. It's
You are a comedian.
but
How did
yeah,
you and
it's a
your
lot
wife
of
meet?
we met in middle school. I was actually
Really?
hmm I was playing with her younger brother and he came and introduced us and nothing happened. I think people think that it was like, I shook her hand. It's like, oh, music
Yeah.
started playing in the background. It was more like, "Hey, what's happening? Hey, nice to meet you. See you later."
Right. I'm
And
playing.
we became friends. In high school, we became good friends in high school, best friends. And then I tried to date her at the end of high school, and she's like, "No, you need to go to college and have fun. You're gonna be on the football team." I had no idea what she meant until I got to college.
Baton Rouge.
Yeah. We started dating near the end of college, didn't work out. Tried it again, didn't work out, but the third time was a charm.
Third
We
time's a charm.
both had growing and maturing to do that. We both look back on it and, can cop to it. So,
There you go.
yeah, I would say that our communication is probably like if it was a video game, our communication level would be 99.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
great. That's huge in a relationship.
I agree. Yeah. Like, and I'm not saying the communication's flawless, but the line is open. You know what I mean?
That's great.
Yeah, because I believe that, which is weird. I talked about how I hated teams, but this family's kind of a team. But the communication helps my wife and I be on the same page, which is priceless because I can't tell you how many couples are not on the same page. And
Yeah.
then, this being in sync really helps.
What do you guys like to do as a family?
Everything I just mentioned.
Yeah, same stuff.
Same thing though. Yeah, going to the movies. I mean, like I don't know. I'm not saying I'm boring, but like I'm boring.
Boring's good.
Yeah, I'm boring. Now my wife, she's more exciting and she does more things outside of the house without me, which is cool because I have more time to create stuff and sit in a room and stare at the wall thinking about life and nihilism. No, I'm just playing. But yeah, she goes places and does stuff. Apparently we're gonna go out of the country next year, so that's exciting.
Cool.
Um
Nowhere?
no, we don't know where yet. I'm hoping London. We don't know where yet. I'm hoping London. Please.
You
Why
have to
am I
say it a
saying
little
that?
louder.
Hmm?
You have to say it a little louder if she's home.
I'm hoping I'm hope I'm hoping we go to London next year.
I
There's
want to go
somebody
to London
outside. Are
too.
you on an interview? Maybe.
So you never got to play in London?
Yeah, we played twice. And
Oh, you did, but
that's
you
one
want
of
to
the
go back.
reasons I want to go. Like I told myself I want to go back twice. Once as like a tourist with my wife. Because we were married. No, we weren't married the first time I went. Second time I went, we weren't married. And then I could just tell it would be so much more fun if there wasn't just this football cloud hanging over my
Mm,
head.
yeah,
Um, and then I want to go back as a performer. It's looking like it's gonna be as a comedian, the way comedy has like taken off like a skyrocket.
great.
But yeah, I would love to go back as a performer one day.
So that's where you want to go. What's the coolest place you've been? Whether it's in the States or
Oh, I was about to say, like, I've only been to London, Mexico, and Canada.
just like the coolest place you've traveled to, or whether it's a city with the NFL or stadium or just I don't know, a place you like to visit.
The most random place came to mind, and it was St. Louis, Missouri. It was a cool spot. Once again, I'm boring. So, like, there was the perfect amount of action in St. Louis for me, but it was still like, a larger city.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna change that. Chicago.
Oh, that's where I live.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
Well, but I was
Chicago.
gonna say you could have hung with St. Louis. My dad and brother, who will listen to this, will be so happy you said that because they both went to college there and they love St. Louis.
Oh,
No, they
okay.
don't live there, but my family lives in Fort Lauderdale, and now my brother lives in New York. So,
Okay.
but St. Louis is
Chicago's one of
fun.
the cities I was thinking about for the special.
Okay, well, we'll
It's
come
like
see it.
Chicago,
Second,
Detroit, and
would you do it at
Atlanta.
Second City? I want to go there. Second
Isn't that
City,
like
like
an improv place though? That's not a
oh, it's
comedy club,
improv.
is it?
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
That'd be
wherever, we'll come watch.
yeah, it'd probably be the
My boyfriend and I were
McDonald's.
saying we want to go see a comedy show.
Do you have any favorite comedians
You know,
or
I
preferred comedians?
I don't. Who should I be? I'm gonna flip it back to you. Who should mine be?
I mean, that's subjective though. That's like, what
I
kind of music should I be listening to?
Comedy is more personal than food. Have you heard that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought I was spitting something on you.
Oh no,
Um,
it is. I mean, it's
I
like
don't
being on stage
know.
naked.
Um, you know, I never like watch comedy specials or anything. I'm trying to think.
I
I've
feel
never
like you
seen a
like John
comedy show.
Mulaney. Oh, so you've never okay.
I've never been to one.
John, I don't know how you would feel about Bill Burr, but John Mulaney is hilarious.
Bill Burr
Um,
was on Eli and Peyton's broadcast last week.
he's one of my top 5 favorite comedians of all
Yeah,
time. Him and
my
Chris
boyfriend likes
Rocker.
him. I know. Chris
Yeah.
Rock, I like. Um,
Oh, speaking of that, if anybody knows Chris Rocker or Bill Burr, they're both coming to Austin. I already got tickets. I'm just trying to meet them. But yeah,
DM him. You should
do you
just.
think they will respond?
You know what's funny about that? This morning, I was on the phone with my grandma, who also will listen to this, and she was asking me something about the show, and she was like, and then she asked me something about work, and I was telling her about one of our brands at work is owned by The Rock, who we were just talking about, Dwayne Johnson, and she's, why don't you have him on your YouTube? And I was like, I could.
Call them up.
Yeah, just call him up. What if I just called The Rock? And she was like, well, so this background is he grew up in Davie, Florida, which is where my parents grew up. And Southwest Ranches is, a small neighborhood there. And his parents live in my parents' neighborhood. And so there is like a little bit of commonality, but it's really small. Like we don't know him.
Yeah, but you can still say, if you want to see your mother again.
No, like, if you care about your family, you'll be on my show.
Care about your family. Here, handing his daughters the phone. Like this ain't one of your movies. I need that interview, Chief.
It's like the same thing. Like, what if you just called him up? It's like, do you know that TikTok sound from the Kardashians? Like, what if you just called Taylor up?
Yeah.
Like, it's the same thing. What if you just called Chris Rock up? What if?
Yeah, you're right. I'm gonna hit him up today on Instagram.
You
I
never
hit
know
up
if you
Kobe
don't
on
try.
Instagram. I tried with Kobe, and he never responded to my DM.
How did you
told
meet
him that
him?
next time I met him, he came and spoke to the team twice. So the first time, I was too scared. Second time, I'm like, shit, I'm gonna die one day anyway. Hey, what's good, big dog? Listen, you came here last year. You were talking about people who needed mentors. I have no mentor figures in my life. I hit you up on Instagram. I don't check my Instagram. I hit you up on Instagram.
He said that?
I said that. Yeah, he was like, I don't check my Instagram. All right, for sure. He was like, a couple million followers. All right, you ain't got to flex, but but I'm looking for a mentor. And he was like, come to the office, on your next off day. Went to the office on my next off day, and everybody in the office just looked like, who the hell is that? There's a Joe Barksdale here to say, oh yeah, send him in.
That's a great story.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I mean, for the short time, but it was fantastic. Like, I remember thinking to myself, like, one day I'll have like a music award or, something that I've done.
Show it to him.
To show it to him. Yeah.
Oh, I got goosebumps.
I did get my first music award this year.
Congratulations. What was that?
Thank you. It was the plaque is outside the room. I'm not going to make you wait, but it was an international music award for the best blues song in North America. So Canada and Mexico. I don't know how much blues is in Mexico, but
you never know. What's the name of that song?
My Angel.
My Angel. And what was the inspiration for that?
People who helped us become who we are, but they're no longer with us. Just a what's the word? Ballad, like written for them.
I like that. That's really neat. So have you started a place to collect awards? Like, so where you can put,
Oh yeah, I
for
bought
that?
a house, so I plan on filling this entire house up. No, but I mean, my studio is usually where I put my awards. I'm trying to do a better job of because I never really won awards. Let's start there. Except for when I was a child, which is why I think that I'm so addicted to performing. That was like the last time I came home with hardware,
Yeah.
which is depressing because I
Well,
was like
'cause
7.
you said you were on that was part of, like, the NFL, right? Your teams didn't win.
Yeah, they didn't win at all. My wife, I mean, we both say that. Like, I don't even know if I'd have been interested in music if I was on a winning team because you're just too busy winning.
Yeah.
But what were we talking about?
Sorry, I
So,
interrupted you.
no, it
Um,
was when you said losses, I
you
was like, so
Oh, no,
many
no,
losses.
why you were addicted to awards and you, like or now
Okay.
why you want more.
Because I was always like, I always saw myself as a burden. I was always called a burden by my parents. They say
Mm,
things like, "Woo, child, you need to grow up and be rich. You are not cheap to clothe and feed." Like, and you start becoming part of the reason that your parents are blaming financial issues on you,
yeah.
and you start to feel like a burden. I remember when I was like 8 or 9, it was the night before my birthday, and I asked my mom, she was like, "Are you excited about your birthday?" I'm like, it feels like things would be a lot better for everybody if I wasn't here, you know.
Oh,
And then my dad comes in the room and starts screaming, "Look what you did to your mother!" Anyway, there weren't many emotional
yeah.
conversations that took place when I was younger. But you want positive reinforcement from somebody telling you do a good job. And I found that in awards. So I used to do talent shows where I would do poems and like add my little, comedic improv and comedy chops in between to make people laugh. And I remember the first trophy I got. Like I remember what it looked like. It was purple. It had 3 little pillars on it. I mean, the trophy was probably like $10, but it meant the
Yeah.
world to me. And from then on, I was looking for that validation that way.
How did that experience influence in probably a different way what kind of parent you are to your girls?
It made me very motivated to, one, become more emotionally intelligent, and two, to remind myself that I was their age once and be who I wish I had when I was their age, both as a child and now. Like sometimes you gotta say no. Encouraging them, just I don't know, like there are things like I can vividly remember my dad saying, like, "I'm proud of you." And I remember thinking, like, I don't give a damn. Like, cause I was like a teenager about to go to college. Like, so those kind of things, doing what I can to make sure that their self-esteem is not very high, but you know what I mean? Like they think that, that their life has value and that, the world is a better place with them in it.
Yeah.
The kind of things that I don't think about myself. So pretty much I look at who I am and where I came from and not try to swing the pendulum so far the other way that you create an issue. But I would argue that's where therapy comes in to kind of stop that pendulum right where it needs to be. So yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, final question for you.
Mhm.
Best piece of advice you've ever gotten?
Love what you do. Kobe
And you
said
love
that.
what you do.
Yeah. Like you've gotta love what you do if you want to be great at it. Cause if you don't love it, you're not gonna do what it takes to be great. Like I'm thinking about it that even with comedy. Like right before you called, I was watching a stand-up special, taking notes. Like I don't know. Like I would have never played football for free.
Hmm.
I would do comedy for free. You know, I don't even know if I play a music show for free. And I love music, but it's a lot of moving pieces. You carrying amps, guitars, microphones. But with comedy, you pretty much show up. You know,
So comedy is your
yeah.
first love? Comedy and then music, you think? If you had to
It
rank
seems
them?
like it, yeah. Because apparently, or maybe both at the same time. Like I've been funny as long as I could feel music. So I don't know, but I know if you're asking me to pick one, it would be
Mm,
comedy.
yeah.
Like if I had to pick one that like took off and that kind of thing, it would be comedy because you can still do music production and honestly, like you can still make music, but right now I'm really digging like producing for other artists and that kind of thing. I actually have an album coming out that I produced entirely.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm not on it. Well, I'm on 2 songs, but it's a rapper that's on my label. His name's Kyle Morgan, and yeah, that's gonna be dropping soon. Actually, at the end of the month.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so while we're at it, plug some things for us. Where can everyone find you and find what you're working on?
You can go to www.joebarksdale.com or at jbdale72 for Instagram and Twitter. But Kobe said, if you do the work, dreams do come true. We know that. Those times when you get up and you work hard, those times when you stay up late and you work hard, those times when you don't want to push yourself, you're too tired, but you do it anyway. That is actually the dream. And what you'll find is if you can do that, then your dreams won't just come true, something greater will. So in my mind, my dreams are going to come true and something better is even going to happen because I'm focusing on enjoying the day, or at least trying to, with the mental illnesses and stuff. And every day is not successful, but that doesn't, my therapist talks about it too. I cannot quit unless it's running. If we're running, I can quit. But besides that, I hate running. Besides that, yeah, I hate running. Shout out to the Stairmaster. But yeah, it's gonna happen. It's already written. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm the person I'm supposed to be when it happens. And I'm sure that the way to do that is by, enjoying the journey.
And I think it's a kind of a good testament to how much our dreams can evolve. And you're a good testament to that too. Seeing how many things you've been able to accomplish and the things that you're able to take on, and that it's never too late to change your dreams. And I like that message too, because I think people listening, and I certainly have kind of changed a career trajectory. And it's nice to hear that there are ways to do that and kind of ever evolve your dreams. So I appreciate you sharing your story and being so open and vulnerable and just sharing all of those things with us. So thank you so much for your time and it just all the advice and all of the things. We really appreciate having you, getting this scoop from Joe.
I appreciate the time. Thank you so much. I hope, well, you already said you had a good time. Sorry, sometimes my brain has this.
Did you have a good time?
It was all right. Yeah, I had a good time. Of course I had a good time. I can't fake my smile.
I'm not going to come to your comedy show unless you had a good time.
Oh, I had a great time. It was fantastic. Yeah. I'm not doing another podcast in my life.
Ordering tickets now.
Can you imagine like Joe Barksdale turns down People magazine and like Joe Barksdale turns down MTV, everybody.
For Jourdan Black only.
And just like that, like your podcast shoots through the roof. Who is this?
Hey.
I'm not
crazier
doing
things have happened.
Yeah, that's true.
I love it. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it.